Alright, so in this first part, this is going to be more of a formal introduction than what the previous video was. So yeah, alright, so you've got your game compiled. What you need to do is, if you've not got your game compiled, compile your game now, whether you're using Unity, Unreal Editor, Game Maker, Construct, ClickTeam Fusion, whatever it is that you're using to develop your game. Build out your files now, your final files, because that's what you're going to need to build this patch. Alright, so into GLC here. Now, there's a couple of prerequisites that you're going to need for this, for the patching as well. Is the first thing you're going to need is an FTP software like FileZilla. FileZilla is free, costs absolutely nothing. You can download it, just Google it. Just Google FileZilla and download the free version. This will enable you to connect to FTP to your server. So obviously the second thing that you're going to need is some kind of server. So if it's going to be web hosting, a patch server, a VPS or a dedicated server, anything that you've got, somewhere to host your files online, because the game files obviously need to be online in order for the patch system to download them to the user's computer. And AWS buckets are supported, S3 buckets are supported. You're just going to make sure that they're set to public. Now, I could be here all day talking about servers and the server setups, but the basic principles are, wherever you upload your files to, it needs to be a web server, and the public, it needs to have public permissions in order to download the files. If you're using a Windows server, so IIS, then what you need to do is ensure that you create a wildcard MIME type, so that people who visit your server can download files of any file type. That usually just involves putting an asterisk in, but you can Google that. You can just Google wildcard file type for Windows IIS. But yeah, server wise, you can even use standard web hosting. If you've got some standard web hosting, you can use that. But again, where we have to draw the line with support is, if it's not one of our servers, we can't provide you with support for that server. So if something is not working correctly, we can try and guide you, because sometimes it could be a HT access issue, file permission issue and whatnot. We can guide you on that, that's fine, but ultimately they're not our servers. So if you're not comfortable with using standard web hosting, or your own server or whatever it is, then we provide patch servers for you, and we can give you full support for them as well. And the packages start off really cheap. We have a basic, a light, a standard and an ultra patch server. And they're available monthly or yearly. So yeah, I'll drop the link down below and in this video, so you can go to the website and check out the patch servers that we have. It's easy to use, it's all automated. You can just select the patch server that you want, fill out the details, sign up, and your server's instantly ready as soon as the process is complete. So yeah, so you're going to need some kind of web hosting or some kind of server to host your files on. It's got to be a web server, remember that. And the file permissions need to be public, so that the patcher can access and download those files. And that's pretty much it, really. So yeah, there's no real other prerequisites that you're going to require apart from that. So let's crack on then, and let's see what we can do with our launcher. So obviously I don't have a launcher pre-built, so I'm just going to put in test AOPS launcher for the Windows title. And I'm going to go with the Desolate Lands template. I feel it's probably going to be best for this. So you just imagine that this is your launcher that you're building. So I'm going to skip over the design stuff. And in this tutorial series, I'm just going to cover the basic implementation of a patch system. And then what I'll do is, once we've completed the tutorial series, at the end I'll put in the developer edition special tutorial where you can embed or integrate the actual patching system into your actual launcher design. Right, so this is going to be our launcher. We've got our update button down here. So sometimes what you need to do is, with the patch system, if it's a new patch system that you're developing, you need to kind of work backwards. So you need to put in hypothetical URLs and stuff, and then upload the files. But we'll cover that in the tutorial, don't worry about that. So the first thing that we need to do is down here, this is on my desktop, I've got a folder called new patch test. So once I've compiled my game files, I'm going to put them into a folder called files in. Now if you look at this folder, it's not an actual game, I'm just using this for the tutorial. It's actually Macromedia Fireworks. I've just copied all the files over, but I'm going to pretend that these are the game files because it doesn't really matter for the sake of this tutorial. So you can see there I've got the executable file, all the DLL files and all the files that are needed for the game to run, and all the folders as well, and all the subfolders and files, they're all in there as well. So this totals at around 137 meg. So yeah, so what you need to do is compile your game files and then create a folder on your desktop, maybe call it your patch, and then have a folder inside there called files in, and this is your game, all the game files. Right, okay, so what we need, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a local version text file. So I just go to new text document and type in version, and we're going to call this version 1.0. So this needs to stay, this needs to actually be in the game folder, or, well, ideally your launcher needs to be in here as well. So once you've finished designing your launcher and you build it out, I'm going to assume that you're going to have the launcher in the same directory as your game, because that's where it's going to launch the game from. So once you've built your game launcher, just copy them files into here as well, and then you can copy, and then you can include the launcher into the patch as well. So if you ever update your launcher, it'll update on here as well. Right, so we've got our local version text file, because the first thing we need to configure is the versioning. So we go up to updates and we select versioning. So it's going to ask where the local version is. So we're going to say it's in a file and it's in version text. So when the launcher runs, it will check the number inside the local text file, which is 1.0 at the moment. And then we need to specify where our remote version file is going to be. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use a temporary patch server that I've set up, which is one of our servers. It's dannytest.biteboxserver.com. So let's see if I can just get that up in a window. So this is generally what you see when you have a patch server from us. As you can see, the general public doesn't need to see anything that's on your patch server, and it's quite secure. People can't directory browse and look through your game files. So this is generally just the only thing that you see, really. So we need to specify where the remote version file is going to be. So in our tutorial, it's going to be dannytest.biteboxserver.com/version.txt. So then what I need to do is create that on the server. So create a new file, version.txt. Then what I can do is I can view and edit that file. And I can just type in 1.0, re-upload that back to the server. Now, if you notice the URL that we're using here for our versioning, if you copy that, go to your web browser and then just paste it in, it should bring up the version text file. It should bring up the information here. Now if it doesn't, then that's where you've got a bit of a problem that you need to look into. There's something misconfigured with your web server. It's either that, or you've created a typo in here, so it's not the correct address. But yeah, you can simply just test that as you go along. So we can see there that it is online, it's accessible, we can read it, that's perfect. Now you'll notice that I've done 1.0 for the remote text file here, and I've also done 1.0 for the initial game install. So what I'm going to do is, in fact, what you need to do is set this to a lower number. So we can set this to say 0.1. That's going to be the initial install. So I set to 0.1. So what's going to happen is it's going to trigger. So we go back to our versioning settings, and we can actually say check at start. So basically, when the user runs the launcher, it's going to do the version check straight away before the launcher even appears. So your launcher is going to connect to, it's going to load up the local information, then it's going to connect to the remote version file, and it's going to compare the two numbers and see if there's a version available, an update available. And if there is, this is what this event's for here, update available. So then all you need to do is click on the plus action, and you need to select patch system. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, we don't need any patch parameters, not right now anyway. So we can just select patch system and close that. And I think it's also wise for us to maybe close the launcher as well, because we're going to include our launcher files inside the scan. If you're going to include the launcher files inside the scan, then you need to exit the launcher as a secondary action. So it'll launch the patch system and then exit the launcher. By exiting the launcher, that means that if there is any launcher updates in with your scan, it can download and apply those updates. It won't be able to do that if the launcher is still running in the background, because it won't be able to overwrite the files. So again, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to remove that because I don't feel like I need to use it for now, but we will cover that later. So that is pretty much set. That's how easy that is. So we've set up the local version number, which is a version text file here. We've set up the remote version, so we're saying this is the URL that you need to check for the latest version number, and then we're just telling it what to do when when there is an update available. You don't have to launch the patch system. You can go to a certain URL. You can minimize the launcher. You can do multiple actions. With Indian Developer Edition, you can do multiple actions. So maybe you want to launch the patch system and minimize the launcher. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can basically do whatever you want to do. But yeah, so there's many different options available there for you to use. And that is pretty much it for setting up the versioning. So we have our server here. So we can see we've got our version text file online now, and we've also checked that the version text file is readable and accessible, and we also have our local version number specified in a local version text file.